Hello everyone, good morning, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Thanks for joining me. Today what we're going to go through is a few of the top UK listed mining shares. So basically we're just going to have a long-term analysis, so looking at the weeklies and the dailies and giving a bit of an indication where I think it's likely to, or at least what are the conditions to be looking for when you want to either take a trade short or long, and what I think is probably the more likely scenario and what I would be looking for. Okay, so starting with Glencore. So on the chart that I have here is the weekly. You can see it's obviously been on an ongoing downward trend, and I think you can see there was a sharp impulse here, and this is what looks to be a pretty reasonable sized correction. So, and you can see this lower trend and upper trend here, and I'm thinking it's a correction. So based on that, then I'd be thinking the move would be down. So I'm thinking it would probably come up here somewhere and either tap at the top and come down, or even just break out down here. So what you'd be looking for is it to break out there. It would go do a retest, something like that, and then that would be your trade opportunity. Now with this one, there isn't a very good long-term chart, so it's not easy to see where the obvious target would be, but I think I would be saying it's probably somewhere down here or even lower. So yeah, I think it's still got another impulse down to go yet. Okay, that's Glencore. Now let's move on to Rio Tinto. So Rio has gone through, the boom, the bust, the boom. So impulse, well, not even. I guess this is, I think you could say it's now on just a gradual decline, and more recently I guess you can see there's a bit of an impulse down. So it's pretty much went sideways for 5 or 6 years almost, but it actually broke the lows just here, and then there's an impulse and now a correction. So I'd be expecting it to potentially tap up here somewhere, and then I would expect it, because it's an impulse correction, I would expect it to be a move down. So if we just get this out, so the target I would expect eventually, and maybe it does a couple of bounces on the way through, but I would expect it to reach at least that 821, possibly lower. Depends where, what it was like around the long term, average, I guess. So, and then looking at the 1 day chart. So it's kind of not a great pattern to trade, because it starts low, then it's come up, and then it's come low again. So what you could do is you could either say, okay, that's my lower, this would be the less risky option, that's my lower trend line, and you'd be waiting for it to break out of here. Sorry, let's get that right. So breaking out like that, then doing a retest, and then going down again and potentially bouncing off there. So I think it could bounce all the way around here and eventually either tap the top and then come down, or just break out down here. If it breaks up here, then I guess there's a potential that it could continue going up. That would be if it breaks that line, then I think that's where you'd start to consider again. If it breaks it, consolidates, like a pullback and then goes again, then I think that's a solid buy. But I think it's more likely that it would be a sell opportunity from here. Okay, so BHP Billiton. Let's go into the weeklies. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so BHP. Same kind of pattern, I guess. It's had its boom. There was the GFC, and then now we've got the reflation after it, and really it's just gone sideways as well. And then this one actually has had impulse, correction, impulse, and you could either call that a small correction or one big impulse, probably more likely one big impulse. And then you can see here that we have the lower trend line, and I think this one's interesting because you could almost say that's the top, in which case it's kind of bouncing on that, you know, within that channel. Or you could say that this is potentially the top that it reaches. So I think again with this one, more likely to see a downside. So you could see something like this, bounce out, retest, and then down again, and whether it bounces off that line, but I think long term it's going to be somewhere between these two lines. Yeah, so, and of course if it can continue to work its way up and break out of this line here and then work its way up again, then I think, you know, there's a chance that it's a buy again, but I think it's far more likely that it's got more down in it before it's going to go back up again. Okay, so Antofagasta. Alright, similar pattern. I think this one had less of a sideways move, so it's had, you can see here there was a bit of a pattern there that it broke out of, and that's the sell. And then really it hasn't had a very easily tradable, unless you wanted to kind of follow the trend line down, but this one's come down. Just get rid of those now. Get rid of that. So here you can see that the impulse correction, and if we move into the daily view, you can see it's already bounced off, you know, what looks like it's going to be pretty close to be that upper limit that it could reach. So somewhere between there and there, I think would be the target for it. So it could work its way up here, and then again, same kind of pattern. It's going to do the retest and then the down. And in terms of like a down, I think there you can see that's where it reached on the GFC. So that was 230, but I think far more likely that it's going to reach 100 or even less. I think would be the target for the next impulse down. Okay, so last one we're going to cover today, Anglo American. Right, so for this one, I think this one had much less sideways movement. It started selling off much earlier, so I think there's probably less opportunity for downside here, but still, let's see. Hang on. Okay. Right. So I think if we go back, yeah, it's hard to tell. So it bottomed out here at 197, so I think there's a good chance it's going to go below that, but without having a previous chart here, it's not obvious where that below target could be. But I think same kind of deal. I think that there's a, you know, it could work its way up this line here and potentially reach this upper line up here, I guess, where it was previously the support, and then at some point I'm thinking it's gonna do the whole break, retest, and then out again. So keep an eye out for it breaking this trend line. There we go. So that's it. Okay, so thanks for joining me. If you have any feedback, let me know. And yeah, have a great day. See you later. Bye bye.